The energy of a woman who doesn't chase, Carl Jung. You will think differently of love if I tell you this. The moment a woman stops chasing, the entire dynamic between the masculine and feminine begins to shift. It's almost as if the universe itself takes a breath, because what was once an imbalance suddenly begins to correct itself. The energy that used to run wild in pursuit now turns inward, becoming luminous, grounded, and magnetic. And this is the paradox. When she no longer runs after what abandons her, she becomes what cannot be ignored. In Jungian terms, this is not about strategy. It is the unfolding of individuation, the process by which a woman becomes whole. For so long, she has been conditioned to chase the echo of her own worth through the approval of men, of the world, of something outside her. Yet what she truly seeks is not a man's validation, but the reunion with her own lost self, the part she gave away each time she tried to be chosen. The woman who chases believes love must be earned. The woman who pauses begins to remember that love, at its truest form, flows toward what is at peace. There is a sacred stillness that begins to grow in her once she stops pursuing. It's not indifference, it's a recognition of her essence. Jung called this withdrawal of projection. When a woman stops chasing, she stops projecting her inner masculine onto external men. She no longer seeks in them what she has disowned within herself: strength, direction, logic, presence. She begins to integrate these qualities, to embody both her softness and her authority. And in that integration, something extraordinary happens. Her presence begins to vibrate at a different frequency, one that both comforts and confronts. Men can feel this shift long before she speaks it. It is not loud. It does not announce itself. It simply is, like gravity. The energy of a woman who doesn't chase is felt as silence that carries weight, as eyes that see without reaching, as a heart that loves without attachment. It unnerves those who have built their sense of power upon being desired. Because when she no longer chases, she no longer participates in their illusion. Her stillness exposes the dependency of those who needed to be needed. In modern psychology, we might call this emotional sovereignty, the state of being where her sense of self no longer collapses in the presence of rejection or absence. But the ancients knew this long before. The Stoics spoke of it as ataraxia, the calm of the soul that cannot be disturbed by external winds. Seneca would say that freedom begins when desire no longer dictates direction. The same principle lives in her now. The woman who no longer chases has found her axis. There is something archetypal in this energy, the shift from the maiden to the queen. The maiden pleads, waits, hopes to be noticed. She confuses attention with affection, and pursuit with passion. But the queen, she does not beg for what is already hers by essence. Her worth is not up for negotiation, because she has met herself in the darkness, her shadow, her wounds, her unmet needs. She no longer hides from them, and so no one can use them to control her. And yet, this transformation is not gentle. It demands the death of illusions. The woman who doesn't chase must pass through the shadow, through loneliness, rejection, emptiness. She must learn to sit in the silence where once she would have begged for noise. She must face the child inside her who was told she had to earn love, who mistook chasing for devotion. And in that inner stillness, the truth begins to whisper, you were never unworthy. You were only waiting to remember yourself. To the outside world, her calm looks like mystery. To those unready for it, it feels like distance. But to the one who has begun to awaken, it is holy. Because the feminine that does not chase is not passive, she is powerful in her restraint. She knows that energy given too freely loses its charge. She knows that the sun does not chase the flowers, it simply shines, and the world turns toward it. This is what Jung meant when he spoke of the integration of the unconscious, that what we once sought outwardly must be reclaimed inwardly. The woman who once ran after validation now becomes the source of her own radiance. She no longer needs to prove, to perform, to persuade. Her being itself becomes the message. And so the masculine begins to feel her absence not as punishment, but as mirror, a mirror that reflects his own disconnection from purpose, his own unintegrated feminine. The dance between them changes, not through confrontation but through vibration. For when she stands still in her essence, she becomes the test and the teacher, the living embodiment of balance itself. And this, perhaps, is the quiet revolution. She stops running after love and starts becoming it. When a woman withdraws her energy from the chase, she does not simply stop running, she begins to return. The energy that once scattered outward in search of recognition now flows inward like a river remembering its source. Her silence becomes fertile, her solitude begins to speak. This is the alchemy of the feminine, transformation through stillness, rebirth through withdrawal. Jung wrote that everything we repress eventually returns, seeking integration. So when a woman ceases to chase, she is not only reclaiming her time or dignity, she is meeting the hidden parts of herself that were buried beneath her pursuit. Each unanswered text, each disappointment, each cold shoulder becomes a mirror revealing what she once refused to see, her dependency on the outer masculine for inner validation. The energy of a woman who doesn't chase begins to gather at her core. It changes her voice, her eyes, her presence. There is no longer desperation there, no performance, no reaching. It's not arrogance either. It's alignment. The deeper she roots into herself, the less she needs to convince anyone of her worth. Her value is no longer conditional, it's inherent. And those who once drew power from her yearning begin to feel her detachment like winter. Yet make no mistake, this is not a story of revenge. It is a story of transcendence. Her withdrawal is not punishment but purification. She stops chasing because she has awakened from the dream that love is something to be pursued. Real love, she now understands, flows from wholeness, not from hunger. To chase is to confess lack, to stand still is to embody abundance. In the symbolic language of the psyche, this withdrawal is the descent, the feminine journey through the underworld. Like Inanna, she sheds her adornments at each gate, the need to be seen, the need to be chosen, the need to be saved. Naked before her own unconscious, she faces the truth that she was never unworthy, only unfinished. The darkness she feared was never punishment, but initiation. As she integrates her shadow, her boundaries strengthen. She begins to discern between connection and detachment, between intimacy and invasion. She no longer confuses attention for affection. Her intuition sharpens, it no longer whispers, it commands. The same woman who once begged for love now walks away from anything that disturbs her peace. She realizes that chasing was not love at all, it was a ritual of avoidance, a way to flee from herself. And the men who once basked in her pursuit begin to feel an unfamiliar emptiness. They do not understand at first what has changed, they only sense that the energy that once surrounded them like warmth is gone. The validation they drew from her gaze is no longer available. Without her attention, they are left to confront their own void, their own unacknowledged need to be worshipped. This, too, is the secret dance of polarity. When the feminine stops chasing, the masculine is forced to awaken or to flee. Some will rise, drawn not by the thrill of conquest but by the gravity of authenticity. Others will collapse, unable to meet her at the level of depth she now requires. She no longer tolerates half presence, half love, half truth. Her field rejects it instinctively, like the body rejecting poison. And through this new energy, she begins to attract differently. Not from longing, but from resonance. Not through games, but through frequency. Her calm becomes her magnetism. Her peace, her seduction. The paradox of not chasing is that she no longer repels through desperation, she calls forth what matches her wholeness. In Jungian language, her anima and animus have begun to dance within her, and the world responds in kind. There is immense quiet power in this stage, a stillness that speaks louder than any plea ever could. It's the moment when the queen inside her finally awakens and takes her throne. She no longer looks for permission to rest in her power. She simply is. To some, her energy feels distant, too calm, too mysterious, too untouchable. But to the awakened masculine, it feels like home. For the energy of a woman who doesn't chase does not reject love, it invites it, refined, intentional, sacred. She does not run toward, she receives. And in her receiving, she teaches the world what love looks like when it is no longer rooted in fear. Over time, this energy begins to alter everything around her, not only her relationships, but her environment, her work, her very way of moving through the world. When a woman stops chasing, she steps out of survival mode. The frantic rhythm of proving and persuading gives way to an entirely different frequency, one that is deliberate, magnetic, and deeply grounded in self-awareness. The more she honors her inner world, the more life itself begins to rearrange around her calm. This is the essence of individuation. Jung taught that the self, when integrated, becomes both the center and the circumference of one's life. The woman who used to orbit around others now becomes her own axis. She no longer bends herself into shapes to fit the expectations of men, society, or the internalized voices of her conditioning. Each boundary she enforces becomes an act of creation, each silence a declaration of freedom. Her energy speaks before she does, not in volume, but in vibration. And yet, there is something profoundly paradoxical here. To withdraw from the chase is not to close her heart, it is to open it properly. Her love is no longer frantic or conditional, it is a current that flows naturally from her being. The woman who doesn't chase doesn't stop loving, she simply stops leaking her love into unworthy vessels. Her affection becomes intentional, her attention sacred. She gives, but she no longer depletes. She nurtures, but she no longer begs to be seen. This inner shift often unsettles others. People who once depended on her endless giving, her availability, her willingness to absorb emotional weight, they begin to feel threatened. They will say she's changed, that she's become distant, cold, or selfish. But in truth, she is becoming whole. And wholeness looks like selfishness to those who benefit from your self-abandonment. In Jungian symbolism, this is the moment the feminine reclaims her animus, her inner masculine. She learns to protect, direct, and assert herself without losing her essence. Her softness is now shielded by discernment, her compassion is edged with clarity. The parts of her that once waited for rescue now recognize they were never helpless. The archetype of the damsel dissolves, giving way to the sovereign, the woman who saves herself not through armor, but through awareness. In this transformation, her energy begins to acquire texture. You can feel it when she walks into a room, an unspoken authority, a stillness that commands attention. Not through effort, but through presence. She doesn't demand to be valued, she radiates value. This is not a role she plays, it is the natural state of someone who has integrated both her light and her shadow. She no longer runs from her pain. She has looked into it, studied it, learned its language. And by naming it, she has disarmed it. Her shadow, once an enemy, becomes her ally. It is what keeps her authentic, humble, and awake. Jung would say that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Now, she is no longer ruled by her wounds. She acts, rather than reacts. She responds, rather than chases. And so, her love becomes rarer, not because she withholds it, but because it now exists on a different plane, a love that requires depth to meet it. Superficiality no longer satisfies her, chaos no longer seduces her. What she once mistook for passion, she now recognizes as instability. She sees through games, through charm, through projection. The woman who doesn't chase has seen behind the curtain, and she cannot unsee. Still, there are moments when her old patterns call to her, the urge to run after what withdraws, to explain herself, to fix, to prove. But she has learned to pause, to breathe, to let the discomfort pass without reacting. This is mastery, the art of not responding to every wound that wants to reopen. This is where healing becomes habit, not event. Through this quiet evolution, her energy becomes medicine, for herself, and for those capable of meeting her there. Her presence starts to heal what it touches, not because she tries to heal, but because she lives in alignment. She has become the embodiment of what Jung called the self, the integration of all opposites, the union of conscious and unconscious, light and dark, love and power. She no longer moves from scarcity. She moves from fullness. And fullness never chases, it attracts, it anchors, it becomes. And now, as her transformation deepens, something extraordinary begins to take shape within her, the emergence of sacred stillness. It's the kind of silence that hums with life, not emptiness. The kind of peace that doesn't mean nothing is happening, but that everything unnecessary has finally stopped. The woman who doesn't chase no longer fights for alignment, she simply is aligned. Her energy is no longer fragmented by longing or fear, and this coherence radiates outward like a quiet sun. The world begins to respond differently to her. Opportunities, people, and experiences begin to arrive not because she hunts them, but because her energy has become an invitation. This is the magnetic law of resonance, what Jung might have described as synchronicity, the mysterious coordination between inner evolution and outer events. When her inner world shifts, her external world rearranges itself to match. What once felt like effort now becomes flow. But before the light fully dawns, there is always a reckoning. Every woman who reclaims her power must pass through a storm of self-doubt. The ego, accustomed to chasing, panics in the stillness. It whispers, what if no one comes? What if stillness means abandonment? What if peace means loneliness? These are not failures of strength, they are the echoes of her old conditioning, the voice of the little girl who learned that love was something to be earned through motion. This is where the real work happens, and the tension between the old self and the emerging one. She must learn to sit in the void without filling it. She must hold the ache without making it mean lack. She must understand that what feels like nothing is, in truth, the beginning of everything. For it is in this space that the psyche rewires itself, that her nervous system learns safety without pursuit. The body that once trembled in the absence of validation now exhales in the presence of solitude. In this stage, her beauty changes. It's no longer the beauty of effort, it's the beauty of embodiment. Her eyes no longer plead, they witness. Her presence no longer performs, it transmits. Even her movement becomes slower, more intentional, as though she has remembered that life is not something to chase but something to inhabit. This is the archetype of the wise woman emerging, the one who carries mystery in her silence and fire in her calm. Men who meet her at this stage will feel something disorienting, an attraction that has nothing to do with physicality and everything to do with energetic truth. Her essence calls to the part of them that longs to be whole, to be seen without judgment, to be met without manipulation. And yet, only the man who has met his own shadow can stand before her without collapsing. Because her energy doesn't soothe the ego, it summons the soul. To lesser men, she will seem unreachable, even intimidating. They will misinterpret her peace as pride, her boundaries as walls. But she has learned the sacred difference between being hard and being holy. Her distance is not coldness, it is consecration. She does not give her energy casually anymore because she knows what it costs to reclaim it. What she protects now is not her heart, but her harmony. This is also where the feminine becomes the mirror for the collective masculine. In withdrawing her energy from the chase, she invites him into maturity. She shows, without words, that love cannot be earned through pursuit, only shared through presence. She embodies what Jung called the reconciliation of opposites, where the feminine no longer submits, and the masculine no longer dominates. They meet in mutual sovereignty, where neither consumes the other. And as she continues to walk this path, she no longer fears being alone. Solitude becomes sacred, not empty. She finds companionship in her own depth, communion in her silence. She no longer confuses company with connection. The world around her slows down because she is no longer racing through it to arrive somewhere else. She has arrived, here, in herself. Her relationships evolve. She no longer tolerates emotional crumbs, inconsistency, or half-hearted affection. Not out of bitterness, but because her spirit can no longer digest what lacks truth. Her energy, once scattered in trying to be chosen, now chooses consciously. She does not ask, will he love me? She asks, can this love honor who I've become? In this way, she becomes both student and sage, learning to love without losing, to give without grasping, to hold space without shrinking. Her power is not in control, but in surrender to what is real. She lives from essence now, not ego. And this, perhaps, is the most beautiful paradox of all. By no longer chasing what runs, she becomes the one everything gravitates toward. Not through effort, but through authenticity. Not through desire, but through depth. At last, the woman who once chased has become the embodiment of something ancient, the sacred feminine in her full return. Her energy no longer fluctuates with external affection, it moves in harmony with her own truth. The cycle of longing and validation has dissolved, leaving in its place a serenity so deep that even silence feels alive within her. She no longer looks outward for confirmation, she listens inward for alignment. And that alignment becomes her compass, her power, her peace. Jung would have called this the integration of the self, the union of opposites within one being. The woman who doesn't chase has unified her inner masculine and feminine. The chase was the symptom of separation, the stillness is the proof of reunion. The part of her that once reached outward for protection has found safety in her own spine. The part that once sought love through others now pours love through her own existence. She has discovered what mystics have whispered for centuries, that the kingdom she sought was never elsewhere, it was always within. From this space, her energy becomes almost unearthly. She walks through the world differently, not faster, but freer. The noise that once disturbed her now passes through her without landing. The chaos of others no longer pulls her off center, because she no longer mistakes empathy for absorption. Her compassion has boundaries, her giving has rhythm. She offers what overflows, never what empties her. And when love does come, because it always does, she welcomes it without trembling. She no longer clings to it out of fear, nor resists it out of pride. She meets love as an equal. It is not her completion but her reflection. The man who approaches her now must come whole, or he will be dismantled by her presence. For the energy of a woman who doesn't chase is not soft in the way the world expects. It is soft like water, patient, powerful, and unstoppable. She becomes a mirror for the awakened masculine, the man who has faced his own shadow, who no longer mistakes dominance for power or silence for weakness. He recognizes her not through lust, but through resonance. In her stillness, he sees his own peace, in her strength, he feels his own purpose reflected back. The union between them is no longer a battlefield of need, but a sanctuary of growth. They do not complete each other, they expand each other. But the truth is, she does not wait for such love. She no longer orbits the possibility of another. Her life is rich, textured, self-sustaining. Her joy does not depend on being understood, her beauty does not require being desired. She has learned to be enough, not as a statement of defiance, but as an effortless truth. When she moves, it is from overflow, not emptiness. When she speaks, it is from wisdom, not reaction. She now understands that the chase was never about love, it was about identity. She chased to feel real, to feel alive, to feel wanted. Now she realizes she was always real, always alive, always wanted, by existence itself. The divine has always desired to express itself through her, she was simply too busy chasing reflections to notice the source of the light. Now that she has turned inward, she glows with that divine remembrance. The energy she carries now cannot be mimicked. It is born of initiation, of surrender, of grief turned into gold. Every heartbreak that once broke her open has become a chamber of wisdom. Every silence she endured has become a hymn of peace. Every rejection has turned into refinement. She no longer measures her value by who chooses her, she measures it by how deeply she lives in truth. To the world, she appears as calm confidence. But beneath that calm lies something fierce, the unshakable knowing that she is the source, not the seeker. Her peace is not apathy, it is mastery. It is the culmination of every lesson learned, every illusion burned away. She does not chase because she no longer confuses movement with meaning. She simply aligns, and the right things come. And so, her life becomes a quiet revolution, a testament to what happens when a woman remembers her power. No longer chained to the rhythm of pursuit, she becomes rhythm itself. No longer waiting to be chosen, she chooses. And in choosing herself, she becomes magnetic to all that is meant for her. She understands now, love that requires chasing is not love, it is projection. True connection does not demand pursuit, it arrives through presence. She has mastered both the storm and the stillness, and in doing so, she has transcended them. The woman who once chased is gone. In her place stands a woman who embodies freedom, not the freedom of escape, but the freedom of essence. She has reclaimed her energy, her heart, her life. And in that reclamation, she has remembered the oldest truth there is. The woman who knows her worth does not chase, she chooses.